I didn't raise my voice when my daughter demanded I sign over the family vineyard at my wife's funeral. When I refused, she did something I never thought possible. My name is Thomas Brennan, and I'm 73 years old. I've spent the last 50 years of my life tending the same 30 acres of grapevines in Napa Valley that my father planted with his own hands. The Brennan Vineyard wasn't just land. It was every sunrise I watched from the South Ridge, every harvest where neighbors became family, every bottle that carried our name into the world. But on the day we buried my wife, Catherine, I learned that some people see land differently. They see dollar signs where I see home. Catherine died on a Tuesday morning in late September, just as the Cabernet grapes were reaching their peak. She'd been sick for 8 months, and I'd spent every one of those days at her bedside when I wasn't in the fields. Our daughter Victoria had visited twice. Once when the diagnosis came, and once 3 weeks before the end when Catherine could barely speak. Victoria arrived the night before the funeral in a black Mercedes that cost more than most people's houses. She's 52 now, a corporate attorney in San Francisco with a corner office and a view of the bay. She stepped out of that car wearing a designer dress and heels too high for cemetery grass, looking every bit the successful woman she'd become. "Dad," she said, kissing my cheek with lips that felt cold. "I'm so sorry I couldn't get here sooner." The Henderson merger was at a critical phase. I nodded. I'd heard about the Henderson merger. It was the same reason she'd given for missing Catherine's 70th birthday, our 50th anniversary, and the last 8 family Christmases. My son Marcus was already inside, helping his wife Julia prepare food for the reception. Marcus runs a small bookstore in Sonoma, barely scraping by, but he'd been here every weekend for the past 8 months. He'd sit with his mother, read to her, help me change her sheets when the hospice nurse wasn't there. The funeral was scheduled for 2 o'clock the next day at Street Helena's. Catherine had planned it herself, down to the last detail. She'd chosen her favorite hymns, picked out the flowers, and written her own eulogy. She'd even selected the plot, up on the hillside overlooking the vineyard where we could see the vines changing color with the seasons. That night, we sat around the dining room table, the 3 of us silent over Julia's pot roast. Nobody was hungry. Victoria kept checking her phone, the screen casting a blue glow on her face every few minutes. "The service is at 2, I said quietly. "Father Murphy will officiate. Your mother wanted it simple." "Of course," Victoria said, not looking up from her phone. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something important. Maybe after the funeral? It's about the vineyard." Marcus's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Victoria, not now. I'm just saying we need to talk. This place is worth a fortune, Dad. You can't manage it alone anymore." "I said not now," Marcus repeated, his voice harder. I held up my hand. "It can wait. Tomorrow we bury your mother. That's all that matters." But I felt it then, like a cold wind coming through the door. Something was wrong. The next day dawned clear and bright, the kind of September morning Catherine loved. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie for the 10th time, my hands shaking. 73 years old, and I couldn't remember how to tie a Windsor knot. Catherine always did it for me. The service was beautiful. Father Murphy spoke about Catherine's kindness, her dedication to the church, the way she'd organized fundraisers and visited the sick. He talked about our 50 years together, how we'd built something lasting. People cried. I tried not to. Victoria sat beside me in the front pew, dry-eyed and straight-backed. On my other side, Marcus held Julia's hand so tight his knuckles went white. We sang Be Thou My Vision, Catherine's favorite. I couldn't get the words out past the lump in my throat. The church was packed with people who loved her, neighbors from the valley, friends from the garden club, workers from the vineyard who'd known her for decades. After the service, we drove in a slow procession to the cemetery. The plot was on a hillside, just like Catherine wanted, with a view of rolling vineyards stretching toward the mountains. It was a 15-minute drive from our land, but you could see the same hills, the same sky. They'd set up chairs under a green canopy. The coffin rested above the open grave, covered in white roses, Catherine's favorite. I sat in the front row with Victoria on my left and Marcus on my right. The priest said more words. I didn't hear them. I was watching the coffin, thinking about the woman inside, The girl I'd married in this same church 50 years ago. That's when Victoria leaned close. Dad, I need you to sign something. I turned to look at her, not sure I'd heard correctly. The priest was still talking. People were crying softly behind us. What? She pulled a manila folder from her oversized purse, opened it discreetly on her lap. I had my firm draw up the papers. It's a transfer agreement for the Vineyard. There's a development group willing to pay $12 million. Cash offer. We close in 30 days. I stared at her. The priest's voice droned on. Someone was lowering Catherine's coffin into the ground with mechanical precision. The whir of the device, the only sound cutting through the prayer. Victoria, what are you talking about? Dad, be reasonable. You're 73. Mom's gone. You can't run this place alone. The Vineyard is worth a fortune, and you're letting it rot while you play farmer. I've done the math. After taxes and expenses, you'll walk away with about $4 million. Marcus and I will each get $4 million. It's the smart thing to do. The coffin was halfway into the ground now. I could hear the mechanical whir, could see the white roses trembling with each incremental descent. You want me to sell your mother's home? Right now? While they're burying her? I want you to be practical. You're not getting any younger, Dad. What happens when you can't work anymore? You'll lose everything. This way, you'll have money for a nice retirement home, care when you need it. I've already looked at places. There's a great facility in Santa Rosa with 24-hour nursing. Marcus leaned forward, his voice a harsh whisper. Victoria, stop. Right now. Stay out of this, Marcus. You've been content to let Dad work himself to death because it gives you some romantic notion of family legacy. I'm being the adult here. The adult? Marcus's face was red. You've been here twice in 8 months. Twice. While I was helping Dad give Mom her medication, change her bed sheets, hold her hand when she was scared. Where were you? Closing deals? I have a career. I have responsibilities. So did we. We just chose differently. The coffin touched the bottom of the grave. The whirring stopped. Silence fell over the cemetery like a blanket. The priest closed his Bible. Victoria pushed the folder toward me. Just sign it, Dad. I have a pen. I looked down at the papers. Transfer of deed. Sale agreement. $12 million for 30 acres of vines my father planted that I'd tended for half a century, where I'd raised my children and buried my wife's dog and proposed on a starlit night in 1973. No. Dad, don't be stubborn. This is the best thing for everyone. I said no. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my jacket. You're being ridiculous. You can't manage this alone. You're going to lose everything. I pulled my arm away. I'm not signing anything. Not today. Not ever. You're making a mistake. A huge mistake. I'm trying to help you. People were starting to look. Father Murphy had stopped talking. The funeral director stood frozen, uncertain whether to continue. Victoria stood up, loud enough now that everyone could hear. Fine. You want to throw away $12 million? Be my guest. But don't come crying to me when you're bankrupt and alone and this vineyard is seized by creditors. Victoria, Marcus stood too, his voice shaking. Sit down. Show some respect. Respect? I'm the only one here with any sense. You two want to play at being farmers while the world moves on? Fine. But I'm not going down with you. She shoved the folder at me one more time. When I didn't take it, she threw it. The papers scattered across the grass, across the casket, fluttering down into the open grave. Then she did something I still can't believe. She reached for the casket, grabbed one of the white roses, and threw it at me. It hit my chest, petals breaking apart, falling onto my shoes. 60 years you've wasted on this stupid farm. 60 years Mom waited for you to sell, to travel, to actually live. She told me, Dad, 3 months ago, she begged me to convince you. She wanted to see Paris before she died. She wanted to see the ocean. But no, Thomas Brennan had his precious vines. The world went silent. I couldn't breathe. Everyone was staring. That's a lie, I whispered. Is it? Ask her yourself. Oh, wait, you can't, because she's dead. Because you worked her to death in this godforsaken valley. Marcus moved before I could. He grabbed Victoria's arm, pulled her away from the grave. You need to leave. Now. Don't touch me. She yanked free, stumbled in her heels, caught herself on a headstone. "You're all insane, throwing away millions for dirt and grapes." She turned, wobbling on the grass in those ridiculous heels, heading toward her Mercedes. I stood there, shaking, watching her go. The scattered papers lay across the gravesite. Father Murphy looked at me with concern. The funeral director didn't know what to do. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I couldn't speak. I kept hearing Victoria's words. She begged me to convince you. She wanted to see Paris. Was it true? Had Catherine been unhappy? Had I really kept her prisoner here for 50 years? The service ended awkwardly. People offered condolences, shooting uncomfortable glances toward where Victoria's car had been. Some of them had heard. All of them had seen the papers in Catherine's grave. Julia stayed behind to gather the scattered documents while Marcus drove me home. We didn't talk. What was there to say? When we got back to the house, Victoria's Mercedes was in the driveway. She was sitting on the porch steps, her designer dress dusty, mascara running down her face. "I called Mom's lawyer," she said without looking up. "Charles Patterson. He's coming over. Victoria, please. Not today. You need to hear this, Dad. You need to know the truth." An hour later, Charles Patterson arrived. He'd been Catherine's attorney for 30 years, had drawn up our wills, handled the Vineyard Incorporation, witnessed every major decision we'd made. He was 80 now, retired mostly, but he came because Catherine had been his friend. We sat in the living room, the four of us. Marcus, Julia, Victoria, and me. Charles sat in Catherine's favorite chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Thomas," he said gently, "I'm so sorry for your loss. Catherine was an extraordinary woman." "Thank you, Charles. Your daughter called me. She had some questions about Catherine's will, about the vineyard." Victoria leaned forward. "I told Dad that Mom wanted to sell, that she begged me to convince him. He doesn't believe me." Charles pulled a folder from his briefcase. Not a manila folder like Victoria's, but an old leather portfolio, worn at the edges. "Catherine did speak to me about the vineyard several times over the years, and specifically 3 months ago when she knew her time was limited." My heart sank. So it was true. She wanted to make sure, Charles continued, that the vineyard stayed in the family. Forever. No matter what. Victoria's face went white. "What?" She was very specific. She'd heard about development offers, about Victoria pressuring you to sell, Thomas. She was worried. So she made some changes to her will. He opened the portfolio, pulled out documents. Legal documents, dense with text. As of 3 months ago, the Brennan Vineyard is held in an irrevocable family trust. Thomas, you are the trustee for life. Upon your death, Marcus becomes trustee. Upon Marcus's death, it passes to his children. The trust has very specific stipulations. The land can never be sold, never be subdivided, never be developed. It must remain a working vineyard, producing wine under the Brennan name, in perpetuity. The room was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. "That's not possible," Victoria whispered. "She wouldn't." She did. She also left personal letters for each of you. I was instructed to deliver them after her death. He handed me an envelope. My name in Catherine's handwriting. I couldn't open it. Not yet. He handed one to Marcus. Then he pulled out a third envelope and held it out to Victoria. She didn't take it at first. Her hands were shaking. "There's one more thing," Charles said quietly. "Catherine's personal assets, separate from the vineyard, including her savings, investments, and the proceeds from her mother's estate. About $800,000 total." Victoria looked up, something like hope crossing her face. "She left it all to Marcus." "What?" Victoria stood up so fast her chair fell over. "That's impossible. I'm her daughter. You can't cut me out completely." "She didn't cut you out. She left you something very specific." He pulled out another document. A bill. For every Sunday dinner you missed over the last 20 years. Every birthday, every Christmas, every hospital visit. She kept a detailed ledger. At your billable rate of $450 per hour, with lost time valued at 3 hours per event, you owe the family approximately $240,000. He slid the paper across the table. Victoria stared at it like it was a snake. This is insane. This is legally binding. She also included a provision. If you contest the will in any way, attempt to break the trust, or harass your father about selling, you will be required to pay this bill in full to a charity of the trust's choosing. If you leave your father and brother alone, the bill is forgiven. Victoria's face cycled through emotions. Rage, disbelief, calculation. I could see her lawyer brain working, looking for loopholes, angles, ways to fight. Charles wasn't done. Catherine also left personal letters. She wanted you all to understand why she made these choices. He stood up, setting the envelopes on the coffee table. I'll leave you to read these privately. Thomas, call me if you need anything. Anything at all. After he left, the three of us sat there. Marcus picked up his letter, turned it over in his hands. Victoria stared at hers like it might explode. I opened mine. Catherine's handwriting filled 2 pages. Neat, careful script that trembled a little toward the end when her hands had gotten weak. My dearest Thomas, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I hope the service was beautiful. I hope you didn't cry too much, though I know you did. You always were sentimental. I need you to know something. These last 50 years were the happiest of my life. Every single day, even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones. Victoria will tell you I wanted to leave, to travel, to sell the vineyard and see the world. She's wrong. I told her that 3 months ago when she visited, and I know she heard what she wanted to hear. What I actually said was that I wished we'd traveled more when we were young. That's true. I would have loved to see Paris with you, to walk on beaches in Greece, to drink wine in Tuscany. But Thomas, we built something better than any of that. We built a life. Every morning, I woke up next to you. Every evening, I watched the sunset over our vines. Every harvest, I saw the fruits of your labor, of our labor, turn into something beautiful. We raised our children here. We made a home. People spend their whole lives chasing experiences, collecting countries like stamps in a book. We chose depth over breadth. We chose to know one place so well that it became part of us. That's not a prison. That's a gift. I put the vineyard in a trust because I know our daughter. I love her, but I know her. She sees value in dollars, not in sunsets. She'll try to convince you that selling is smart, practical, the right thing to do. Don't listen. This land is your legacy. It's who you are. The day you stop working these vines is the day you stop being Thomas Brennan. I won't let Victoria take that from you. Marcus understands. He always has. He gets the financial assets because he'll need them. The bookstore doesn't make much money, and Julia is pregnant. Did you know? She was going to tell you after the funeral. They're having a girl. They want to name her Catherine. Let Marcus help you with the vineyard. Let Julia bring the baby to visit. Let yourself feel joy again, even though I'm gone. And Thomas? Don't you dare feel guilty. Not for 1 second. You gave me everything I ever wanted. You loved me well. You showed up every single day. That's more than most people get in a lifetime. I'll be watching from the hillside. I'll see the harvests. I'll see our granddaughter running through the vines. I'll see you, still working, still loving this land the way you loved me. All my love, forever and always, Catherine. I couldn't see the page anymore through my tears. I folded the letter carefully, held it against my chest. Marcus was crying too, his letter clutched in his hand. Julia had her arm around him, tears streaming down her face. Victoria sat frozen, her letter unopened on her lap. Aren't you going to read it? Marcus asked. She picked it up slowly, her hands shaking. She opened it. I watched her eyes move across the page, her face crumpled. She doesn't forgive me, Victoria whispered. She says she loves me, but she doesn't forgive me. She read it aloud, her voice breaking. Victoria, you are my daughter, and I love you. I will always love you, but I don't like who you've become. Somewhere along the way, you decided that success meant money, that love was measured in dollar signs, that family was an obligation to be scheduled between client meetings. You missed your father's 70th birthday because of a deposition. You missed our anniversary because of a merger. You visited me twice while I was dying, and both times you checked your phone during our conversations. I don't blame you for having a career. I'm proud of what you've accomplished. But I blame you for forgetting where you came from, for treating your father like a burden, for valuing the vineyard only for what it could be sold for, not for what it is. Your brother has nothing compared to you. No corner office, no expensive car, no investment portfolio. But he has something you lost. He has a heart that still remembers how to love without calculating the return. I'm leaving you nothing in the will because you don't need anything from me. You're rich already, but you're poor in the ways that matter. Maybe someday you'll understand. Maybe you'll realize that the best investment isn't the one with the highest return, but the one that gives your life meaning. I hope you find your way back. Your father will always have a place for you at his table, but you'll have to come to him. No more demands, no more ultimatums, no more treating family like a business transaction. I love you, Victoria. I just wish you'd loved us back. Mom. The silence after she finished was deafening. Victoria folded the letter, placed it carefully on the table, and stood up. I need to go. Victoria, Marcus started. No, she's right. Mom was right. Her voice was hollow. I don't even know when it happened. When I stopped being part of this family and started being this. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. Dad, I'm sorry for what I said at the cemetery, for the papers, for all of it. She turned to look at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my daughter instead of the attorney. She didn't want to leave, did she? She was happy here. She loved it here, I said quietly. She loved the life we built. Victoria nodded, tears finally falling. I'll leave you alone. I won't contest anything. I'll pay the bill if you want me to. Your mother forgave it. So do I. I don't deserve that. No, I agreed. But you're still my daughter. She left. The Mercedes pulled away, disappeared down the long driveway between the vines. Marcus and Julia stayed. We sat together in the quiet house, reading our letters again, letting the words sink in. Julia's pregnant? I asked finally. Marcus smiled through his tears. 12 weeks. We wanted to wait until after. We didn't want to take attention away from Mom. Catherine knew? She guessed. Said I had the same dopey smile Dad wore when Mom was pregnant with me. I laughed. It felt strange, laughing on the day of my wife's funeral. But it also felt right. Catherine would have wanted that. Will you help me with the harvest? I asked. I can't do it alone anymore. Of course. Julia and I were talking. Maybe we could move into the cottage. Help out full-time. The bookstore isn't making enough anyway, and this way, the baby would grow up here. On the land? You'd do that? Dad, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. That night, after Marcus and Julia left, I walked out to the vineyard. The September moon was full, casting silver light across the vines. I walked the rows like I'd done 10,000 times before, touching the leaves, checking the grapes. I found myself at Catherine's favorite spot, the South Ridge, where you could see the whole valley spread out below. We'd stood here on our wedding night, young and stupid and in love. We'd stood here when the kids were born, when my father died, when the drought almost killed us, and when the harvests made us whole again. I stood there now, alone but not lonely, and I talked to her like she was still beside me. You were right, I said to the stars, to the vines, to the woman I'd loved for 50 years, about everything, about Victoria, about Marcus, about this place being our life, not our prison. The wind rustled through the leaves, sounding almost like her laugh. I'll take care of it, I promise, for as long as I can. And then Marcus will, and then little Catherine after him. The Brennan Vineyard isn't going anywhere. I stayed there for a long time, watching the moonlight on the grapes, feeling the earth beneath my feet. This land had given me everything, a home, a purpose, a family, a life worth living. Victoria had thrown away $12 million that day at the cemetery. She'd thrown away papers and roses and angry words. But I'd kept something worth more than any amount of money. I'd kept my wife's dream. I'd kept my family's legacy. I'd kept the promise I made 50 years ago to tend these vines, to build something lasting, to show love not through grand gestures or exotic trips, but through showing up every single day. Some people measure wealth in dollars, some in experiences collected and countries visited. I measured mine in harvests, in sunrises over the vineyard, in my son coming home to help, in a granddaughter who'd run through these same rows someday, learning the same lessons Catherine taught me. That morning at the cemetery, Victoria asked who I loved and how I showed them. The answer was simple. I loved Catherine. I loved my family. I loved this land. And I showed them by being here. Every day. For 50 years. That's not a small life. That's not a wasted life. That's a life well lived. 3 months later, Marcus and Julia moved into the cottage. Julia's belly was starting to show. We worked the harvest together, the three of us, just like my father and I used to do. Victoria never came back. But once a month, I get a check in the mail. Anonymous donor, the memo line always says. But I know her handwriting on the envelope. She's paying the bill her mother forgave, not because she has to, but because she needs to. Maybe someday she'll come home. Maybe she won't. Either way, the door is open. Catherine's grave overlooks the vineyard, just like she wanted. I visit every Sunday after church, bring her fresh roses from the garden she planted. The Cabernet came in strong this year, I tell her. Marcus thinks it'll be our best vintage yet. Little Catherine kicked for the first time yesterday. Julia says she's going to be a fighter, just like her grandmother. The wind moves through the vines below, endless rows of green stretching toward the mountains. I miss you, I say, every single day. But you were right. This life, this place, this is what we built together. I'm not giving it up, not for $12 million, not for anything. I trace my fingers over her name on the headstone, Catherine Brennan, beloved wife, mother, keeper of vines and dreams. Thank you, I whisper, for choosing this life, for choosing me, for knowing I'd need protecting from our own daughter, for loving me enough to set things right. The sun sets over the valley, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Somewhere down below, Marcus is closing up the tasting room. Julia is making dinner in the cottage. A new generation is beginning, and I'm here, where I've always been, where I'll always be, home.